Michael Handel's Masters of War, Classical Strategic Thought, 3rd Revised and Expanded Edition. This is Appendix A, Contradiction and Paradox in the Theory of War. So the reader's attention must be directed to the tension or seeming contradiction between Clausewitz's requirement, on the one hand, not to take the first step without considering the last, or his emphasis on understanding the nature of war one is about to embark on. And on the other hand, his innovative discussion of the role of friction, chance, uncertainty, luck, and the poor quality of intelligence, which reveals the near impossibility of reliably predicting the course of a war. This contradiction is, however, more apparent than real for at least 2 reasons. The first is that even if attempts to understand the nature and course of a future war are unreliable, it is still better to try than to do nothing at all. Second, uncertainty, chance, luck, and friction equally affect all parties to a conflict, so the side which can, by hard thinking and careful calculations, perform even marginally better will gain a considerable advantage. This is only one of the many internal contradictions, tensions, and paradoxical problems that can be identified in a careful reading of On War and any other important theory of war. But this does not mean something is wrong with Clausewitz's thinking. The problem lies in the contradictory nature of war itself. That is, an accurate study or description of war must deliberately make an effort to discuss these contradictions, tensions, and paradoxes. Discerning this is all the more difficult because Clausewitz often fails to identify these existing tensions explicitly. Other examples of such tensions in On War can be mentioned very briefly in this context. The first is the apparent contradiction between Clausewitz's concepts of the principle of continuity and the culminating point of victory attack. The principle of continuity suggests that success must be exploited relentlessly. That is, once one side has gained an advantage, it must press the attack or follow through an operation to prevent the enemy from regrouping. At the same time, his concept of the culminating point of victory attack tells us that sooner or later every offensive will lose momentum even as it succeeds. The commander must therefore know when to stop his advance, pursuit, or exploitation of success and move over to the defensive. Clausewitz leaves it to the military genius, the person whose intuition will descry the best solution, to properly identify and utilize the counterforces represented by these 2 principles. Another basic paradox of war is that a state wishing to terminate a war should not appear too eager or too weak. It must instead convey the impression that it could continue to fight indefinitely. Otherwise, the enemy will seize upon any evidence of a desire for peace as a manifestation of weakness and as a sign that he holds the advantage. And if he feels he can win, he will refuse to negotiate or will increase his demands, thus delaying the termination of the war. As a result, particularly if both sides are afraid to disclose their desire to end the war, the pretension of strength or indifference to continued fighting becomes a self-negating prophecy that causes the war to drag on. Modern examples are the First World War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Iran-Iraq War. This paradox was noted by Clausewitz in his only detailed discussion of war termination. He wrote, "If the incentive to make peace grows on one side, it should diminish on the other." Finally, another source of tension common to both Sun Tzu and Clausewitz is their insistence on the primacy of politics in the formation of the strategy, direction, and control of war. For this recommendation clashes with their desire to grant the field commander operational freedom of action sufficient to capitalize on fleeting opportunities and battlefield successes. Yet neither strategist can develop criteria to delineate the roles of the civilian and military authorities. As strategists, Sun Tzu and Clausewitz insist on the primacy of politics, but as military leaders they also want to preserve the commander's tactical and operational freedom of action. As we have seen, Jomini is the theorist who resolves this tension by proposing that once war has begun, all related decision-making authority be given to the military. This is certainly a dangerous idea that puts operational thinking ahead of strategy. Thus, students and theorists of war should not automatically interpret war's intrinsic tensions and contradictions as theoretical weakness, but rather as a reflection of war's paradoxical nature. Permeating all military activity, such unresolvable dilemmas have no simple solutions. A realistic theory of war must therefore identify and discuss its inherent paradoxes, an approach that sanctions the intolerance of ambiguity and endeavors to streamline the theories of war by artificially eliminating contradictions is dysfunctional, unrealistic, and counterproductive.